In the hollowed halls of justice, tensions can run high. But what happens when the scales tip from order to chaos? From verbal outbursts to unexpected confrontations, these are the moments that left the legal world in shock. Like in the case of Deobra Delone Redden, a 30-year-old man who launched a surprise attack on Judge Mary Kay, punching her in the face. Here is what led to the situation. He was initially arrested after allegedly attacking a man with a baseball bat. He pleaded guilty and faced a possible sentence of 1 to 4 years in prison. This was one of the multiple allegations filed against Redden. He was also accused of battery on a protected person, extortion by threats, and intimidating a police officer. Redden had earlier asked the judge for leniency in her sentencing, describing himself as He later added that he did not think he should be sent to prison. Although his family said he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, Redden was re-evaluated and found mentally competent to stand trial before pleading guilty. Records show that the previously served prison time in Nevada on a domestic battery conviction. Judge Mary Kay Holthus had said Redden's prior record necessitated. Despite his plea, she made it clear she intended to put him behind bars. As the court officer moved to handcuff him, Redden yelled expletives, and this was the shocking result of what happened. The situation was settled after there was a wrestle behind the judge's bench on the floor by several court and jail officers and court staff members, including some who were seen throwing punches. A courtroom marshal, Shane Brandon, was brutally injured. Left bleeding with a gaping cut on his forehead and a dislocated shoulder, he was rushed to the hospital for treatment. It was later discovered that Redden was able to slam the judge's head against a wall, striking her on the head and pulling out hair during the attack. After being treated, the judge was back in the courtroom after the attack. She completed the sentencing. Redden was to spend up to 4 years in prison.
All right, that being said, in accordance with the laws as stated out, this court does now sentence you in addition to the $25 administrative assessment fee, $150 DNA fee, the $3 DNA administrative assessment fee, and $250 indigent defense.
Cesar Almace, Redden's defense lawyer, dodged questions from the Associated Press, refusing to return phone calls and emails. His silence speaks volumes. But if you think Redden's sudden attack on the judge was extreme, what would you say to the fellow that killed her girlfriend and spit on the judge's face? Meet Bass Webb, a murderer from Kentucky. He was arrested and produced in court before Judge Vanessa Dixon. He tried to run over 2 security guards, and he does run over one of them. Meanwhile, there's a little car chase with the police, and they nab him. He tells them that he has just cut his ex-girlfriend's head off, and they really ought to go and gather her up before her children wake up. But the judge excused herself from the trial since she knew the 2 jail employees beforehand, and Judge Dixon decided to recuse herself from the case. But what Webb did next shocked the whole room. Webb unleashed a vile spit attack on Judge Dixon, leaving her stunned. But the judge refused to be intimidated. She swiftly summoned Webb back to the stand, slapped him with charges, and had him forcibly ejected from the courtroom. A satisfying dose of justice served. Moreover, this was not the end of Webb's defiance of the law. While awaiting trial, Webb started a riot with other inmates inside the Fayette County Detention Center. Webb was shot with beanbag bullets and even hit in the neck with a pepper ball. In retaliation, Webb swung a metal telephone box at a corrections officer. He was charged again for his actions and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Webb was also convicted of attempting to murder the 2 jail employees and got an additional 37 years, facing a total of 52 years of prison time. As all this was going on, new evidence came up linking Webb to the unsolved murder of his ex-girlfriend, Bria Rowitz. While incarcerated, Webb had bragged to a detective about murdering the 32-year-old. To escape the death penalty, Webb pleaded guilty and got an additional 50 years in prison. Now, if that wasn't enough, 5 years later, another cold case came to haunt Webb. This time, he was charged with the murder of another ex-girlfriend, Sabrina Vaughn. Sabrina was a mom with a 7-year-old daughter, and she was 29 years old. She had been hanging out with him and some of his creepy-ass friends, and she vanished. Her brother-in-law finally reported her missing, and the days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into years, and she was never found. That was in 2003. Webb appeared in court with a sinister tattoo on his head. It had a murder list of all the people he intended to kill, including all judges, all prosecutors, all cops, the media, 3 rats that had been crossed out, and many more. Webb was convicted and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. While Bass Webb's audacious acts in the courtroom shocked everyone, how does it compare to a woman who audibly engages in domestic violence? Melissa Hardwick, a McCreary County woman, was charged for domestic violence hearing in a Russell and Wayne County Family Court in Kentucky.
Go now.
Her ex-husband had filed a domestic violence order against her. Melissa had a couple of misdemeanors and a couple of arrests, and she got out of jail. Her ex-husband was explaining the situation when suddenly Melissa erupted. The judge replied, and Melissa shouted back that she was not doing anything wrong.
Be held in contempt of this court if you become disruptive.
I don't care. I haven't done anything to this court.
The judge released the verdict of the law, slammed her for contempt, and sentenced her to 10 days in jail. This was when things got crazy. Melissa leapfrogged toward the judge, but thankfully, court deputies stopped her just in time. Moreover, that did not stop her verbal threats. Hardwick continued to yell as she was restrained by bailiffs and made what appeared to be threats to the judge as she was led to the courtroom. The judge was not injured in the incident. According to courtroom officials, she informed Hardwick's ex-husband that another judge would be appointed to handle the domestic violence charges. Additional felony charges were later filed against Hardwick related to the incident. She is charged with terroristic threatening 3rd degree, intimidating a participant in a legal process, and resisting arrest. She was eventually sentenced to 120 days in prison for her outburst. But if you think that was extreme, what would you say to a man who was convicted in a double murder cross and elbowed his attorney in the head? Joseph Zeeler, a convicted double murderer, was in a Lee County, Florida courtroom on June 26, 2023 for his sentence hearing. He was convicted of the 1990 murders of 11-year-old Robin Cornell and her babysitter, Lisa Story, in Cape Coral. The station reported that both victims were beaten, sexually assaulted, and were suffocated to death. The gruesome scene was discovered by Robin's mom, Jan Cornell, who called 911. After 24 years of not solving the case, here was the chilling breakthrough everyone was waiting for. Zeeler's arrest in 2016 for shooting his own son led to a DNA match, finally cracking the 1990 cold case. Justice finally had a name and a face.
And a friend of hers in 1989, and therefore that's why your DNA is in the Courtyards North condominium.
Yes, I thought so because she didn't wash her sheets.
Zeeler's fate worsened as he was further arrested and faced new charges. Capital murder. The prosecution threw the book at him, demanding the ultimate punishment, death. Zeeler took the stand, but his lies were soon exposed. He first claimed that he didn't know the victims of Jan, but then changed his story, admitting that he was with Jan the night before the murders, trying to explain away the DNA evidence that nailed him. Zeeler then took the stand. He initially denied knowing both the victims and Jan, but later he said his DNA was at the same crime scene because he and Jan were involved in intimate acts the night before the murders. Zeeler then claimed that the prosecutor was framing him.
He is siding with the prosecution. Of course they're going to say that.
Okay, and their opinion on that was that Jan Cornell was excluded from that DNA.
I don't think so.
Eventually, the jury found Zeeler guilty of first-degree murder. But what happened next was a scene that stunned everyone. Zeeler motioned to his attorney, Kevin Shirley, and then threw a sharp elbow into Shirley's forehead. Two bailiffs immediately wrestled Zeeler to the ground. The judge asked Shirley if he was okay. He told the judge this: Zealer was hoping to get a new trial, but the judge dismissed the motion and did not overturn the conviction. The jury had heard everything and slammed Zealer for the death penalty. Meanwhile, Zealer elbowing his lawyer wasn't the only action left to see, but we'll say when a fellow gives his lawyer a good and drastic punch to the face. Christopher Teal, a 26-year-old man, was involved in a violent incident in a Seattle courtroom when he punched his lawyer, Reed Birkland, during a competency hearing. The incident occurred on February 27, 2020, at the King County Superior Court. Teal was facing sexual assault charges for the rape of a woman in the restroom of a Ballard car dealership. The incident happened on December 13, 2019, and Teal was subsequently arrested and charged with rape. During the competency hearing, Teal became agitated, and this was the next shocking thing that happened. He gave his defense attorney, Birkland, a punch as Superior Court Judge Karen Donahue was addressing them.
Get down, face down! Face down, get down on the face!
The violent outburst had led to Birkland dropping the case, citing concerns for his safety, and Teal's behavior in court was not an isolated incident.
Regarding the Christopher Teal matter. No. Okay. I have a question though. Are you running a diminished capacity or insanity or anything of that nature?
I don't have anything to talk to you about.
Thank you.
He had previously been violent in court, and his actions raised concerns about his mental fitness to stand trial. However, he had been diagnosed with an unspecified schizophrenia spectrum disorder or some other psychotic disorder. This made him not competent to stand trial 3 times. A spit hood was placed over his head, and Teal was removed from the courtroom. Birkland was unhurt in the incident, barring his pride. He promptly withdrew from the case. The next time Teal returned to court, authorities were ready for him. He was restrained to a chair, unable to lash out again. But despite being literally tied down, Teal still had the audacity to complain about one thing. His biggest concern was how his hair looked in his mugshot. The judge scheduled another hearing in a week's time. Eventually, Teal was sentenced to 8.5 years in prison. While Teal's case might be linked to a mental health issue, what happens if you get headbutted and break your nose? That was exactly the pain a sheriff on duty got when Daniel Stewart Barry headbutted him while being taken to court for robbery charges in Mississippi. Daniel Stewart Barry, a 21-year-old student at the University of Mississippi, faced several criminal charges. He was arrested for strong-armed robbery. Barry allegedly robbed a store on February 7, putting a female clerk in a headlock and taking $20 from the register. While being escorted to court on February 9, Barry lost it, and this happened. He headbutted and broke the nose of a Union County deputy. He was known for taking hard drugs while in the cell. He assaulted a jail worker who brought him dinner on February 8, possibly under the influence of the drug gravel, which is believed to be flakka, a synthetic drug similar to crystal meth.
What this is or how much he's taken or whatever, but we'll have to get him evaluated by a doctor.
He faced additional charges of assaulting a law enforcement officer. His bond was set at $200,000. What is your thoughts on these convicts? Let us hear your thoughts via the comment section. And as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for watching.